and I am sure it will be really interesting discussion, as it is centered to the anti-money laundering and fighting financing corruption and preventing crimes, and it will delve into the reforms that are recommended by the European Union to the candidate countries, and generally about the issue of the AML-CFT. And I'm happy that we have very interesting panels. Some of the panelists will join us remotely, and we have Ambassador Mamuka Jenti, who is the moderator of this panel. And Mamuka currently is the senior key expert on justice and civil society in Global Facility on AML-CFT, EU Global Facility. And previously, he has a deep experience in working on anti-money laundering, including in Georgia. He was the first representative in Greco, and dealing with the Moneyval. He was involved in the reports of Moneyval, and also he used to work on different projects, EU-funded projects on justice, judiciary, etc. This second panel is co-sponsored by the AML-CFT EU Global Facility, and I'm happy that we have such a cooperation and contribution from your side. So I won't take it long. Please, floor is yours, and please introduce your distinguished panelists. Thank you to those that are joining us online. I'm happy that we have been engaged jointly in various activities in the frames of the EU Global Facility. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Georgi, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Well, I won't, violate the tradition, stating that yes, I was civil servant almost all my professional career until 2013. Since then, I'm not a civil servant. So another thing is that we have a good gender balance, and we have also a very post-COVID approach here because it's a hybrid one. I have excellent presence here, but we have also excellent presence online. My plan was really to make a short introduction, but we have some modifications to bring to the, how the panel is orchestrated because of some urgencies, and that's why let me maybe slightly modify the agenda, which is, shared and distributed. So without this introductory remarks or presentation of the topic, which we will come back to this issue definitely, let me perhaps ask maybe Ella Franko-Jaskiewicz, who is our colleague and distinguished member of this AML-CFT community globally. She is coming from FIU of Poland. She has recently, very recently, till I think December 2023, she was chairing the Moneyval, which is, a SFAT-style regional body responsible for AML-CFT issues, overviewing it in this continent, on European continent, which includes EU member states, but also candidate states or countries which started the negotiations to EU accession. And also Ella's professional experience, it's really broad. She's currently chairing as ad interim Egmont group of FIUs. So I think she's really excellent person to share with us why this topic is important for EU member states, for candidate member states, why this topic is important for good governance, anti-corruption, fighting organized crime, etc. Because this is something that we should keep in mind, because the previous panel when we were discussing anti-corruption measures, ensuring good governance, it's at the end of the day, the cases that Gizo, for instance, brought to our attention, so at the end of the day, they are all linked to money laundering issues. So Ella, without further continuing, I know you have to leave for a government meeting in a few minutes, so that's why maybe I'll kindly ask you to share your opinion about the Moneyval experience, Moneyval evaluations for especially EU member states, because again, the context of our today's panel is about reviewing how AML-CFT standards, what kind of influence, what kind of importance they have for accession, let's say, process to this supranational institution, so organization. So please, floor is yours.
you very much, Mamuka, for introduction of me and my work in the global IML CFT community. Thank you also for allowing me to start with my short introduction to the topic that you will be discussing soon. Dear colleagues, so ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, dear colleagues, I apologize. I will be here short for a while, but I hope to join later during the day the discussions and the excellent conference organized by Georgian authorities. Thank you for inviting me for this meeting and this panel. So, as Mamuka mentioned, I am the former Maneval chair. I finished my term in December last year. So that's why I would like to say some few words about Maneval evaluation process, that what we had so far, and that what might expect us also in the coming years. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, dear colleagues, once again, the current fifth round of the Maneval Mutual Evaluation is coming to an end. So I would like to make a brief summary, but with regard to one element of it, I do not have much time, so that's why I decided to choose one small element, namely the supranational approach with regard to FITF recommendation 32, which is dedicated to cash carriers. But before I come to that, I would like to draw your attention to the general conclusions that we have noted from the evaluations of our member countries, Maneval member countries so far. Maneval members continue on average to demonstrate a moderate level of effectiveness in their AML CFT efforts. Thus, the median level of compliance is below the satisfactory threshold. The best results are achieved in the areas of risk assessment, international cooperation, use of financial intelligence, and investigation and prosecution of terrorist financing. Effectiveness remains particularly weak in financial sector supervision, private sector compliance, transparency of legal persons, money laundering convictions and confiscations, and financial sanctions for terrorism and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. What is interesting? At the same time, Maneval members demonstrate impressive results when it comes to the pace of implementing FITF recommendations. This average overall indicator has reached 72% in the current round, which is the highest in the FITF-led global IML CFT network, and on par with the FITF itself. Now I will draw your attention to the immediate outcome 6 and its relevant recommendations. The overwhelming majority of Maneval's jurisdictions have performed quite well on technical compliance with recommendations 2932, which are related to immediate outcome 6, dedicated to financial analysis and collaboration between FIU and law enforcement agencies. 91% of Maneval jurisdictions are compliant or largely compliant with recommendation 29, which is dedicated to the work of financial intelligence units. 95% of jurisdictions with recommendation 30, which are responsibilities of law enforcement agencies, and 86% of jurisdictions with recommendation 31, which are dedicated, the recommendation is dedicated to the powers of law enforcement agencies. These percentages clearly illustrate that usually only minor deficiencies are identified by the assessment teams. However, the situation of compliance with recommendation 32 is slightly different. Only 71% of Maneval's jurisdictions are compliant or largely compliant with recommendation 32, as I mentioned, recommendation dedicated to cash carriers, due to moderate shortcomings. The situation looks even more complicated when we separate out the Maneval members that are also EU members. Here we find that out of 13 EU member states, only 3 received largely compliant rating for recommendation 32, while the remaining 10 received only a partially compliant rating. The current evaluation round, due to its staggered timing, took into account in its supranational approach with regard to the EU members, the 2 EU regulations governing the area indicated in recommendation 32, which are regulation number 1889 for 2005 of the European Parliament and the Council of 26 October 2005 on controls of cash entering or leaving the community, and regulation, EU regulation 2018 1672 of the European Parliament and the Council of and the Council of 23rd October 2018 on controls on cash entering and leaving the Union, and repealing Regulation 1889 of from 2005. The adoption of the EU regulations by member states has not resulted in harmonized assessments for recommendation 32. Unfortunately, it should be noted that the EU regulations governing cash carriers do not cover all the elements guiding FITF recommendation 32. In particular, those related to EU internal border declaration system for cash on BNI through mail and cargo. If EU member states only had this shortfall, they could count on an LC largely compliant rating. However, also at member states level, a number of other elements were identified that do not comply with recommendation 32, thus affecting an additional downgrade. Unfortunately, elements such as lack of appropriate sanctions, lack of cooperation, exchange of information between competent authorities, or lack of regulation which would enable customs to stop or restrain currency of BNI for a reasonable time in order to ascertain whether there is a suspicion that money laundering or terrorist financing or predicate offenses influence the downgrading, and these are issues that go beyond the scope of the EU regulations. Let me inform you that the June 2023 plenary meeting, FITF, discussed the sequencing for the fifth round of mutual evaluations. During the discussions, several EU delegations noted the ongoing reform of the EU AML CFT framework, which will substantially change the approach to the fight against financial crime in the EU. Manuel also discussed its sequencing for the sixth round in December 2023. To allow the entire FITF and Manuel membership to understand the extent to this reform and count its possible consequences on the mutual evaluation round, it was agreed that the European Commission, in consultation with the FITF and Manuel secretariats, will inform the plenaries of the differences between the current EU AML CFT framework and the new one that is forthcoming, and suggest how this change might be managed in the mutual evaluations and follow-up processes within the framework of existing sequencing principles. To inform you, Manuel was the only FSRB to conduct two rounds of evaluations under the 2004 FITF methodology, the fourth round, and also was the first FSRB to start assessing effectiveness. We are now approaching the end of our fifth round mutual evaluations, which will be finalized in 2024. We will be starting this year the evaluation of the new round. The FITF adopted a 6-year mutual evaluation cycle, which will start in October 2025 and be finalized in October 2031. While FITF and FSRB's mutual evaluation cycles should be aligned, there is a flexibility for FSRBs to adopt a 7-year mutual evaluation cycle where necessary. For Manuel cycle, subject to our resources in Manuel, the evaluation will be between June 2025 June 2032, with the first evaluation visit starting in 2024. Changes to the process aim to ensure an increased participatory approach of members, clearer cut-off dates for the provision of information, additional consultations of relevant authorities, harmonized templates for the provision of information to evaluation teams, etc. All this built on the experience of the previous rounds with a view to improving the quality of the reports. As you know, the intention is that the overall mutual evaluation cycles will be slightly shorter, so countries will get assessed more frequently. This can be a challenge for certain jurisdictions, especially smaller ones, given their limited resources. So, colleagues, I hope you will be able to work on your new round of evaluation, which is coming soon. As for Manival, as I mentioned, we will start the evaluation process this year. In autumn this year, we will commence our first evaluation, and in the next year, new evaluations for countries will come much faster. So I wish you a good luck. I wish you a very fruitful discussions. And with this, please allow me to leave you. Unfortunately, I have to join another meeting. Thank you, colleagues, and see you soon.
Ella, thanks a lot. Thank you very much, and good continuation with your government meeting. So, I guess it's really important what we've just heard from Elżbieta, because it first of all says that, evaluating countries, it doesn't matter they're member states of the European Union or not, it's still ongoing. So when we have aspirations, especially it's important for the region, it's important for Western Balkan countries, those who are having the candidate status or have opened all the negotiations, it's important to keep this in mind. It's important also for accession negotiations and accession procedure, because there are some preconditions where aspiring countries or countries which are willing to join the organization have to ensure compliance with certain standards in AML-CFT field. If it's not done, then there is a problem, and I think this is something we should keep in mind, and that's why we really need to continue with reforms. We need to try to synchronize, align our legislation, our practice. And I'm referring to all countries, actually. It's not just about Georgia, but also all the candidate countries. It's important to align, because everything is evaluated, everything is monitored, not only by Manival, but also by the European Commission. And here I am really happy that we have, just let me check if we have Samuel online. Yes, now we can see him. Samuel Guirado Borrego is a policy officer at the European Commission, DG FISMA. It's a main body in the Commission which actually evaluates and monitors AML-CFT standards globally. It's also responsible, in participating and representing European Commission at the FATF meetings, at other FSRB gatherings where Commission has observer status or participatory status. DG FISMA is also taking up responsibility of, it's a parallel to, not parallel, but it's, I would say, similar to FATF process of listing countries. So as most of you, I guess, know, it's not just FATF which so-called gray list countries, but the European Union has kind of a similar, let's say, procedure. In most cases, but again, I'm pretty sure Samuel will correct me or will explore this topic himself. In most cases, this listing is automatic. As soon as FATF lists a country, European Union also lists it, but there is a difference that when the listing comes to the play, European Union has a bit more stringent approach and more robust, I would say, requirements, especially it concerns, not compliance, but at least the state of certain new highly sensitive and highly important topics for European Union, European Commission, like beneficial ownership, etc. So, but I think I should stop here, and I will let Samuel, who is also responsible for the portfolio when it comes to Eastern Partnership, and if I'm not mistaken, also Western Balkans, or maybe not, I don't know. Samuel will explain. Yes. Okay, so yes, and then we will hear, what was the approach of the Commission, and I guess it will be yet another information useful to us, to countries represented here, just to keep in mind to your and our everyday work, be it private sector, be it civil society, or the regulators or the authorities. So please, Samuel, floor is yours, and thanks for waiting, and sorry for this last-minute modification of the agenda.
No problem at all. Good afternoon for everyone there in Georgia. My name is Samuel Guirado, and I'm a policy officer at the Financial Crime Unit at the European Commission, and as you said, specifically at the Directorate General FISMA, which is Financial Stability, Financial Markets, and Financial Services and Capital Markets Union. Let me, I'll try to be very brief, but just because of these two issues that you mentioned, on recommendation 32, it's true that we had an issue there, but actually there is a cash control regulation which entered into force June 21. Before that, member states generally were not assessed as compliant with recommendation 32, but that has changed in a few countries like Luxembourg, France, Germany recently. There's also the interpretative issue. So yeah, so far is as applying in each member state, and we don't have a supranational basis yet. Regarding the list, as you very well said, we have our own list, which uses the FATF as baseline as per the methodology. We have the prerogative not to list candidate countries. So that's the reason why, for example, Turkey is not in our list and Albania wasn't. And also, we do say, and go with the issue, now that I already addressed the issue of recommendation 32, we do say, and we are FATF compliant, so that's why we follow FATF, but in some aspects we go a bit further, especially I would say on beneficial ownership, and that's why we have beneficial benchmarks. We have, additional EU benchmarks that we might set with some third countries, and that's why we have some countries additionally from FATF too. But today, I'm going to present you the role of anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism, which I will shorten from now on, of course, as AML-CFT for the benefit of time, and its role within the European Union's foreign policy, its critical relevance to our neighbors, and especially to our EU candidate countries, among which, since December 2023, we have the honor of counting with Georgia, of course. In an era marked by interconnected financial systems and global challenges, AML-CFT stands not just as a policy framework, but as a signal of our collective commitment to security, integrity, and cooperation. AML-CFT is in practice a cooperative effort to prevent the misuse of the global financial system by illicit actors. These mechanisms are not merely regulatory burdens, but are fundamental to protecting our financial systems, promoting economic stability, and ensuring public safety against the threats posed by organized crimes and terrorism. The European Union, recognizing the sophistication of these threats, has developed a robust legal and regulatory framework, continuously updated to address emerging challenges. Our policies not only comply with international standards set by bodies like the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, of which the Commission is a founding member, but often set benchmarks for global best practices. The European Union, recognizing the transnational nature of threats, has embedded AML-CFT measures in its foreign policy. AML-CFT measures are instrumental in maintaining the security and stability of the EU and its surrounding regions. By disrupting the financial pipelines that fuel criminal enterprises and terrorist activities, we are not only protecting our citizens, but also fostering a global environment of peace and security where the rule of law is capital. Through our AML-CFT policies, we encourage neighboring and candidate countries to strengthen the legal and regulatory frameworks, and this fosters an environment where transparency, accountability, and justice prevail, laying the groundwork for sustainable development and cooperation. The path to EU membership for candidate countries and enhanced cooperation for our neighbors is paved with benchmarks and standards that include AML-CFT measures. Aligning with these standards is not just a procedural step, but a transformation that brings about closer integration with the EU, enhancing economic opportunities and ensuring a unified front against common threats. Hence, aligning with EU AML-CFT standards is both a challenge and opportunity. It is a rigorous process that demands significant legal, institutional, and cultural shifts, yet it is also an opportunity to attract investment, strengthen governance, and participate more fully in the global economy. It is an opportunity for the Western Balkans, Turkey, Ukraine, Moldova, and of course Georgia to strongly bind the future to the European Union, as expressed by the Commission in its November 2023 communication on EU enlargement policy. The rule of law, in particular the independence of functioning of the judiciary and the fight against corruption, fundamental rights, the economy, the functioning of the democratic institutions, and public administration reform continue to be the cornerstones of the enlargement policy. This document mentions several examples of work in this area. For example, Albania showed confiscation of assets that has significantly increased. Bosnia and Herzegovina adopted a national strategy and an action plan on AML-CFT. Ukraine improved the alignment of its legislation, notably the definition of politically exposed person with the FATF standards. Moldova adopted new legislation on asset recovery, fighting financial crime and money laundering. Investigations against oligarchs are also progressing well. And a new high-level advisor in the field of anti-money laundering and assets recovery and management started his assignment in Moldova in January, joining the EU high-level advisor mission to provide advice to the Office for Prevention and Fight Against Money Laundering and to the Criminal Assets Recovery Agency. And last but not least, the document also mentions Georgia, which adopted an action plan for de-oligarchization and share it for opinion with the Venice Commission, the advisory body of the Council of Europe in the field of constitutional law. Georgia also set up an anti-corruption bureau, and Georgia increased international cooperation in the fight against organized crime. This Commission communication of November 2023 also states that the key indicator of success for these countries will be a credible track of proactive investigations, prosecutions, and final convictions related to corruption, organized crime, and money laundering. All actors in the rule of law chain should produce solid results through targeted financial investigations, resulting in systematic confiscation of the proceeds of crime. The EU, recognizing the challenges that this legislation and enforcement alignment may pose, is committed to support these countries through a variety of mechanisms, including technical assistance, sharing of best practices, capacity building, and financial aid, helping them to upgrade the AML-CFT regimes. This process fosters not just compliance, but a deeper integration into a rules-based international system, enhancing stability and prosperity. Adapting to the evolving landscape of financial crime requires constant vigilance. The use of technology by illicit actors, the emergence of new financial products, and the complexities of global finance present ongoing challenges, including the use of artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies. In response, the EU takes a dynamic approach, including the adoption of digital tools for monitoring and enforcement, and fostering international cooperation for information sharing. As announced this January, we are in the final stages of the AML package presented in July 2021. After a provisional agreement was recently reached with the Council and Parliament, we are finalizing the new AML directive, AML regulation, the AML agency, a new supervisory body, and also the already approved transfer of funds regulations, which will enter into force this December. Our foreign policy leverages AML-CFT as a tool for diplomacy, development, aid, and as a criterion for accession and partnership. It is a testament to our belief in the power of collective action to address collective challenges. As we look to the future, the role of AML-CFT in our foreign policy remains a cornerstone of our commitment to a safer, more transparent, and equitable world. The challenges ahead are significant, but so too are our resources, our resolve, and our collective spirit. We will continue to work hand in hand with our neighbors and candidate countries, supporting them in the journey toward AML-CFT compliance and beyond into the broader embrace of EU values and standards. Our shared future depends on our shared commitments to these principles. In closing, the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing is crucial for our global financial system. In this issue, the European Union remains a determined leader, partner, and advocate for a world where prosperity is built on the basis of integrity and justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel. And thank you for excellent job you are doing with your colleagues. It's really important for ensuring really stability, financial stability and integrity, not only within the European Union, but in the neighborhood and globally. And your approach and your, let's say, dedication and the ideas that are coming from your Director General are really important. And we also see that the European Commission, the European Union as such, is really extending its approach. We are having these updated regulations, directives, almost regularly in order to respond to newly emerged risks and threats. We are seeing developing on a daily basis. So although criminals are quite innovative, apparently, I mean, some response to mitigate those risks are also getting more and more efficient. And with this upcoming AMLA or AMLA office and institution or structure, I think that's a contribution of the European Union to the global financial security will be even more profound and important. Of course, it starts by increasing and strengthening, let's say, capacity, standards, and practice within the House or within EU member states. But this is also important for, again, keeping in mind the context of our discussions during this forum about four countries which are aspiring to join the European Union in the more or less near future. So once again, thank you very much for your presentation. I think it was really useful and informative for the participants, but also it's useful for to continue our discussion during the panel. With this, I would like to move to next speaker, which in my opinion is extremely important, also recalling the previous discussions at the previous panel, where the role of the judiciary, role of the justice was emphasized, underlined, as the most challenging in this region. Also the same applies to the Western Balkan. So basically all those countries that forum is, let's say, tackling or dealing with. I worked myself a lot with judiciary in Moldova. Basically, I have some information about, obviously, about Georgian situation. I had some connection with Ukrainian, let's say, situation, less from, let's say, common courts, mostly from constitutional court perspective, but still it's impression is that, and the assessment is fully in line with what we have heard earlier this morning. This is one of the most challenging topic in our countries. The same is true for Western Balkans. Same is true at least for Montenegro for sure. Same is true for Serbia, North Macedonia a bit less, but still these issues are persistent everywhere. So what is important from AML-CFT perspective is that judiciary is the weakest link, unfortunately, in the panel chain which is supposed to investigate, prosecute, adjudicate money laundering and terrorist financing cases. We can see in all the reports, and it's not only for European, let's say, countries, it's true for, I mean, other continents, other countries covered by other FSRBs rather than Moneyval, that there are a lot of criminal cases open, there are a lot of investigations ongoing, prosecution badly or well, I mean, still doing their job, but then at the end of the day, we don't see any convictions, we don't see any decisions taken by courts sending criminals to the places they deserve. So I think this is very difficult, and this is very complicated and challenging. I'm not saying here that I'm accusing judges everywhere of not doing their job, because again, when you have intelligence, coming from intelligence services, this intelligence has to become an evidence, acceptable evidence, which will be acceptable by judges for them to be able to prosecute and adjudicate the cases and, bring and accept that these evidences are enough to send someone in jail or prosecute a criminal. However, we also see, and this is a fact, that judges are not too much interested in these topics. I can give you an example where my personal experience when I was talking to many of the judges, they're saying, yes, but during our lifetime career, maybe it will be 2 or 3 cases of money laundering, 0 or 1 or 0 terrorist financing. I'm talking especially countries in Europe, where less terrorist financing, let's say, cases are discussed and investigated. So so they are not really bothering themselves to do more, to even learn. But again, you have to learn, because these are topics, these are issues where you really need to have updated information about emerging standards, emerging risks, and the importance of these top issues. This being said, I also want to underline that, of course, we need to strengthen this part, but without prejudice to the second, not the less important part, which is basic protection of basic human rights and fundamental freedoms. We do not have to sacrifice, and because we have cases, again, maybe less in this continent, on this continent, but we have a lot of cases otherwise, in other places where AML-CFT standards are misused in order to prosecute, let's say, for instance, political opponents, or to bring to justice political opponents, because, or civil society organizations. This is also happening. So we have to keep this in mind and find this golden balance. And the key solution to this, before passing the floor to our next speaker, is really independence of the judiciary first, and second, that judiciary has to be aware about standards, about new developments, and about ways, and have enough tools to effectively combat and do their job when it comes to money laundering and terrorist financing offenses. Now, I'm really pleased to announce our next speaker, which will, in much better and detailed way, will explore this topic and link between judiciary, justice, and the AML-CFT. And I'm pleased to announce next speaker, who is Ambassador and His Honor, His Excellency and His Honor, Jean-Paul Laborde, who is, it's very really difficult unless I read to, Jean-Paul, to read your short bio. So let me by heart mention a few of most, not, they are all important, but some of that I can remember. So Jean-Paul has been one of the first assistant to the Secretary General of the United Nations when it comes to AML and terrorism issues. He is a former judge at the French Cassation Court, been a general prosecutor, his academic work is also outstanding, and now he's, of course, I'm delighted that he works with our project, and he's our member of our advisory board for our project, and he's also currently is a roving ambassador of the Mediterranean Parliamentary Assembly, if I'm not mistaken. I know I did not manage to go through all your titles, but I think this has been distributed, and it would take too much time for the panel where we are limited in time. So, Jean-Paul, you are free to, contradict what I've said. Maybe my approach is wrong. You know better. You are a former judge. But this is, I am as a non-judge, but as a lawyer, see as a solution and see as a challenge. But again, floor is yours. You are free to kill or destroy whatever I've said before. Thank you.
Yes, of course. I have a very funny experience of many things, but still 20 years in the French judiciary, and all the time mainly involved in financial crimes, either a prosecutor or as a judge at the end of my career. And what you describe about the situation of the criminal justice system, and especially the judiciary, is perfectly true, Mamuka. I will not contradict you. You are well aware of what should be what are the challenges. Yes, independence of the judiciary. But independence of the judiciary doesn't mean, at the same time, totally disconnected from the reality. That's, again, the balance. Independence of the judiciary doesn't mean either, to neglect what could come from outside, especially I think about all the new elements concerning AFTF. For example, for a judge, AFTF at the very beginning doesn't mean anything. And this is why I am with you with the global facility against money laundering and CFT, because we are doing a real job in informing the judge. Let's go even further. having some working sessions with them. I am thinking about a country a bit farther, but still in which we had to insist on many of the elements concerning this very important topic. Why we had to go to see them, and try to make them aware of the techniques which are necessary for fighting MLA and CFT. First of all, the challenge. The challenge is huge. We have almost seized during the last years, each year, 1% of the amount of the money which has been laundered in the world. 1%. And if you want to have a scale, I always give this scale. The business of organized crime in the world is about $4,000 trillion, while the army budgets in the world is $2,000 trillion. So you see the scale of the challenge. And the judges are normally the judges are really not interested in this scale. So they have to understand first, despite in addition to the fact that they have to be independent, they have to be aware of the challenge. Because at the end of the day, they have to seize, they have to freeze, and they have to confiscate the assets. Everybody knows that for TOC, transnational organized crime, the main element is to make money. This is a big difference between money laundering on one side and terrorism on the other side. Whatever the type of financing of terrorism is, the ultimate goal is to commit terrorist acts. Whatever the type of activities of transnational organized crime is, the main goal is to make money. And it is, by the way, well written in several international instruments. So judges have to be not only aware, but convinced that their role in these actions against money laundering, not only by sentencing the people, but also, which is very often more complicated, confiscating the amount of money the amount of funds which are disseminated in the world. This is a very important task of judges. And most likely for countries which are, let's say, in the process of accession to the European Union, that's a point that the EU is always looking at. The amount of money which has been seized, the amount of money which has been frozen, funds, and mainly the money which has been confiscated. The judiciary has not made its job. For that, I think that we have to go back to judges, discuss with them, because the laws, as it was said during the last session of this meeting, on good governance, and especially on corruption, laws are almost in place, almost. For example, I just looked at, before this session, and for this session, I just looked at the ratification of the states which are in the room concerning the Transnational Organized Crime Convention, the UN one, the Anti-Corruption Convention, and the Warsaw Convention on Money Laundering. The three, you are perfect, guys. You have ratified everything. So it means you are living, let's say, in a heaven in terms of legislation. But the practice, that's where we have to be good. And that's where we have really to improve. What have you done in terms of seizing, or not even confiscating, but at least seizing or freezing cryptocurrencies, virtual assets, and all of that? Zero. So this is where probably we have to make a real effort. Since you have the instruments, means we have the instruments there. You can even use for that what we call the judicial training method of the European Judicial Training Network of 2016 concerning judges. Then the judges, will not be offended by the fact they are trained, because, a judge, when he has been a bit senior, say, you want to train me? In France, we have this training system with the École Nationale de la Magistrature. So even when you are 60, you are still trained. And the people are happy because they go to the National School of Magistrature for 8 days, and they are out of the office. They don't work, heavily as usual anymore. So they are very happy to go to Paris because, the National School of Magistrature is in Bordeaux, but the training, the training model is in the center of Paris, in l'île de la Cité, nearby Notre Dame. So they like very much to go there. So many people go for the training. So at the end of the day, it's a methodology, and if that's the first point. Second, also, I think that in order to give a good, let's say, a good opinion, a good visibility, and something that say that you are very serious in this type of exercise, you might have also what we also have in some countries, specialized judges on this issue. The point exactly what somebody says, perhaps you, Mamuka, yes. You said, Mamuka, that a judge say to you, you see, in my lifetime of a judge, I had at the end to judge 2 or 3 cases of money laundering or financing of terrorism. That's a real problem. You have to be trained. This training has not to be lost in translation. And the people who have invested in this type of proceedings, and procedures, which are extremely difficult at the end of the day, complex at least, if you have not been trained for that. It is much better to invest, that the state invest in judges which can really work on these issues. Now, let's put the blame also on other parts of the hearse. Let's say the executives and the parliaments, time to time, they hesitate to give too much power to the judges because, after that, this is what we call in France, by the way, the government of judges. So this is a balance which has to be maintained, but at least you have to have people who can face organized crime. There are 2 types of, and this is something that you have to distinguish. There are 2 types of offenses which can be differentiated, actually, and we should be differentiated. I wrote an article on that in a legal newspaper in France some days ago. The first point is that let's differentiate these white-collar crimes from organized crimes. And I say that with in a very cautious way, because very often it might be linked or interlinked, but you will distinguish clearly the money coming from, for example, women trafficking, children trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking. You will distinguish them mainly in the majority of the cases from what could be, for example, the false contracts, with the administrations and all of that, and trying to corrupt a judge or something else, trying to corrupt a law enforcement officer for getting a public sector contract, etc. You see, the scale is not the same. Once you have distinguished, of course, both have to be punished, are punishable, but not you have to distinguish that, because you have to have your priorities and submit to the judges something that he can understand is a very grave and serious offense. Because at the end of the day, a judge is what when he is judging? When I was a judge, I was always thinking that, and this is a formula at the end of the judgments of the court in France, you see, in name of the French people. When you are a judge, you are judging in the name of the French people, in the name of the Georgian people, in the name of the Ukrainian people. That's what you have to have. Means that when you do your job of a judge, you are protecting your citizens. Despite the fact that time to time, of course, you have to sentence people, with a very heavy sentences, still, it's not a personal dealing. It's the fact that even against this guy, you have nothing. That's not a problem. He has committed certain facts. He has a certain personality, and you have to judge him. That's it. In the name of the others, means in the name of the society, in the name of the people. So having said that, training and specialization of judges in these matters are essential to get something which is good. And this is actually what we do. And I just give the example of a country in which we went with Mamuka. We discussed with the judges of the Cour de Cassation, and at the end of the day, that was about something very technical, but still, I just give you this example. To judge somebody from the offense of money laundering without judging this person for the predicate offense of, let's say, drug trafficking. The judges were saying, guys, what are you telling us? We will judge this guy for the drug trafficking and basta. Yes, it's possible. But if you have not, all the elements concerning the first offense of drug trafficking, and you have the good elements which have been given to you by the FIUs, that's always better to have this sentencing with necessary and the important confiscations of goods and money, rather than to run after the first offense on which you have no evidence. That's the issue which has to be dealt with, and for which judges have to be really aware of that. In another country, that was for a civil law country, the example I gave. In another country, which is a common law country, we are now in the process of finalizing a manual for judges, in order for them to be fully aware of what they have to do. And you know that in the common law country, it's very difficult to have specialized judges, very difficult. So it means that at least they should have a manual in order for them to be able to, let's say, face the cases and not, at the end of the day, acquit the people who have committed such offenses. That's what I wanted to let you know. In my view, in coming back at the very beginning of my presentation, I felt that you see, in the process of accession, you have the laws, you have now many of the institutions in place, but what you have to have is the right people in the judiciary, well-trained. The trainings are very interesting. You can have many sort of trainings, but in the EJTN European Judicial Training Network of Manual of 2016, you will see there are simulated hearings and role play exercise, debate, alternation of lecture and group work, practical demonstration, etc., case studies, and I am sure that the judges will enjoy to have such exercise. We have to do it because it's very important for the future of your countries, but also very important for the future of Europe, that we are much more reinforced, stronger together to counter money laundering and organized crime and the financing of terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Well, I think we can conclude that that especially for accession, but also again, it's not the end, and it's not panacea. It's important is that it's also in the inherent interest of the state to try to comply with AML/CFT standards and fight effectively organized crime or, money launderers. So, and we also come to a conclusion, and again, this is not you or me or anybody else saying, these are pure facts. We can verify each and every mutual evaluation report. I would say for almost each and every country globally, that biggest problem statistically. I mean, I'm not talking about inherited problems or what are, what are the basics or what are complications. I'm just referring to pure statistics. If you refer to statistics, you will see that biggest problem when it comes to prosecution and adjudication of these cases is with the justice system. And there we need some, yes, please, you can intervene, definitely.
For example, and something which is very strange for them, that the AFTF recommendations apply to them, to the judges. That's something we have to enforce, I would like to say.
I can tell you, just give you an example that unfortunately Ella has left us, but Ella being a president chair of Manival, and when in Poland she was expecting Manival assessors team, and she knew what is at stake, she specifically organized trainings for judges of the Supreme Court and Appellate Court of Poland to prepare and explain them what are these guys from different countries. I don't know, maybe even Tamta was there among the assessors of Poland or not. What are these assessors are coming to discuss? We do have, Jean-Paul, for instance, problems when in some countries, FATF or Manival or other FSRB's teams are evaluation or assessors teams are going. They're meeting, Supreme Court president can say, it's a high-level FATF, let me meet them. So this guy, Supreme Court president, is meeting them, but at the meeting, he or she is unable to provide replies to the questions which these assessors are coming. These assessors are not coming to check and to have this nobility or have, tick the box that, we met the president of the Supreme Court. For them, what is more important is to see what the interlocutor in the country, assessed country, is able to provide with. And we had some examples, and I myself can tell you, I had this discussion with our Turkish colleagues in Ankara with heads of FIU and the judiciary, is that they made this mistake, and the report is not reflecting the actual situations. They are much more advanced okay, there are still problems, but they're much more advanced than the report assessment. And the problem is not because the assessors were, bad guys wanted to, put bad things about Turkey. No, what they want, but they were unable to gather this information. So Ella in Warsaw, she is organizing special training. So maybe it could be a good example, a recommendation for Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, and the Western Balkan countries, for judges to explain them what these guys are coming for and what they are looking for. So not just ticking the box or meeting someone important and VIP. No, they are looking for very concrete information, statistics. They're looking for explanations why this or that evidence was not accepted. What are legal problems? What are legislative problems? What are other topics which needs to be tackled? Sorry, you wanted to say something before we move to...
No, Tava. No, thank you.
Merci. So, thanks a lot, Jean-Paul. As always, very informative and useful to hear and debate with you. I hope you will stay with us until the end of the panel, so we can also get to the question and answer sessions. However, now we still have some technical issues, and Brussels, which is capital of Europe, but has some internet problems, which is not new actually. I can tell you. I mean, and internet here and in Moldova and in Ukraine, even during war, is much better than in Brussels. I guess that's for sure. So we can share some good practices to Western European countries easily. So that's why let me ask now Tamta Kribadze, who is head of methodology, legal and foreign division of the most important AML-CFT body in the governmental structure of Georgia, which is FIU, of course. She's been also very active in manual sessions. She's been active and very important contributor to the development of relevant policies and strategies in Georgia. She's been also assessor, so she can also maybe comment on what me and Jean-Paul were just discussing about readiness of countries when they are meeting these assessors, and to what extent this is important for even the reporting, because this reporting at the end of the day for these countries, our countries we are covering today, is important as a precondition for further, let's say, progress towards European integration. And just a last point I would mention from myself, I remember when we had the first Manuel discussion about first Georgian report, I was sitting there alone from Georgia. Well, other countries then and now they have 40, 30, depends on, in African regions, they are coming with 120 people to defend their report. I was sitting there for 2 days alone, and then one good friend of mine from Georgia, he joined for the last discussion because it was about justice. So, I mean, but now situation is much better. I mean, it was in beginning of 2000. So now we have very good and efficient FIU, and all institutions are supporting this exercise. So Tamta, from you, I think if we can start by discussing what are your expectations and what is the linkage between, accession process and ongoing reforms by the government, by the authorities. What would you see as a challenge, or what is a kind of a positive that we can be happy because this will help of Georgia's quicker, swifter integration to the European Union? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamka, for giving me the floor. In the beginning, I will try to briefly summarize what we've done in the last 3 years, I would say. And the start point will be the assessment of Council of Europe Manual Committee of Georgia. The report was adopted in September 2020. Of course, the report highlights all the achievements and acknowledges that the legal framework is in line with international standards. Also, the system is effective, but of course, Georgia is not exception, and we still have some areas that we need to work on. That's why we were put in the enhanced follow-up procedure that we are still in. It's the 3rd year. So after the mutual evaluation report was adopted, Georgia started with the establishment of a standing interagency commission. And because the FIU is the head of delegation to Manuel, also FIU is the secretariat of commission. And the commission consists of all the relevant agencies that are in connection with anti-money laundering, countering terrorism financing, and also the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. And we started working on the national strategy and action plan for coming 3 years. Also started working on updating the national risk assessment of Georgia in a sense of MLTF, which is also very important because it's a main document that a lot of public authorities and also private sector has to rely on when dealing with the risks associated with the countries. So the commission was established in 2022. The strategy and action plan consists of all the goals and authorities, and it's for the period of 2023-2026. And I also should mention that the role of the Commission is not only to address all the FATF recommendation, manual recommendations, what we said, but also as we are already a candidate country, the role of the Commission is to oversee how the anti-money laundering directive is implemented in the country. And also how the Warsaw Convention is implemented in the country. All the relevant areas of anti-money laundering in a sense of international standards is within the Commission to oversight. So the after having the strategy and action plan, we continued also to work on framework to enhance the way that manual recommendations investigated us to do. And also, like the progress is also seen in the enhanced follow-up reports of Georgia. We were able to upgrade the recommendation 29, which is about financial intelligence unit of Georgia. And it was mainly made possible by increasing the power to whom we can share the information. So the investigative service of the Ministry of Finance was added to the list of the agencies that FIU can share information. Also, we had some new amendments to AML law, and some sectors are now, which were not, but are now under the AML framework, is also important. For example, virtual asset service providers are now under AML obligations, as well as accountants. All sector is under AML regulations right now. So we are also continuing to work towards the implementing all the recommendations that were given us. This year is very important for us because we're in the third year in the enhanced follow-up procedure, which kind of is the expectation by the manual committee that most, not if all, recommendations will be fulfilled by the end of the third year. So we still have about 6-ish months to manage all that. So we're in a very active today, as of now. And yeah, as for the challenges, of course, it's ever-changing globalization, and the you have to also keep up with all the changes. It is sometimes very difficult to coordinate from our perspective in a in a quick way, like the way international organizations expect you to do. So it is a challenge, but I think we're doing well in this regard. And I think I'm really positive about the results. We will see. I do not want to say anything in advance, but we're doing as much as we can. So I hope that we'll have the good results when it comes to manual assessment, as well as, well, we're working on the being more in line with the directive as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much indeed. And yeah, wish you good luck. I really hope we have enough challenges. I mean, Georgia has enough challenges to face, and we are facing them in terms of, you know, progress with Brussels. So I hope with my AML CFT issues will not be within this package of problematic issues. So that's why good luck, and you know, I wish you all the success in your really important endeavors. I think Georgia is a good example, but we have other examples, and I think Oksana is very well placed to provide us with an information about how it works in Moldova, in the Republic of Moldova. Oksana, just to present, is also one of the persons who is very well known to the AML CFT international community. She's been in this business for quite a lot, despite her young age. I mean, almost her whole professional career she has dedicated to fighting financial crimes. And she's here not only as a representative of Moldova, but recently we've got good news that Oksana has been elected as a chairman or president of the Conference of the Parties of the very well-known, famous Council of Europe Convention called ETC 198. It's about confiscation, freezing, and of proceeds of crime and the financing of terrorism. No, I remember because I was taking even part in drafting the convention some times ago. So, and your experience, because these countries, not only Eastern Partnership countries, trio at least, and countries in Western Balkans, we have a lot of in common. There are some specificities, which is normal, but at least the approach is identical. And now, during last year, especially after granting the candidate status, Georgia still has to go this, but you had this assessing by the Commission of the developments and the results achieved during this process, which includes also AML/CFT matters. So, for Georgia, it's still to come. Although I understand that there will be no report by the Commission about Georgia. I don't know what's the reason, but it's nothing to do with AML/CFT. It's not very good news for Georgia, but I don't know. There should be some other reasons, and it's not the place to discuss them here. However, you got it, and at one stage, Georgia will get to there as well. So Ukraine is the same. So we might be useful to see if you can share, but also not to forget ETS 198. So if you can tell us about countries' progress in that regard, because it's also not maybe acquis communautaire, it's not maybe acquis of the European Union, but European Union takes very seriously implementation and respect of the provisions of this convention, which is legally binding for all the candidate countries we are covering today. Please, Oksana.
Thank you so much, Mamuka. I'm really pleased to address you today here in person, and very nice to see my colleagues online. Okay, it seems that they left, but I'm really privileged to be in Georgia. It's my first time here in Tbilisi, and thank you, EU Global Facility, for making it possible. Jean-Paul, oh, thank you, Your Excellency, you're still there. I'm really, it's a pleasure for me being here, and it's a pleasure for me to address you today wearing two chapeaus, because actually I'm here to, as Mamuka mentioned, to address you or to provide you some insights from Moldova's perspective as far as the alignment of our national legislation, particularly anti-money laundering and terrorist financing legislation, towards European standards. But also, I will take this opportunity being here and debrief you a little bit in my capacity of the president of the Conference of the Parties of the Money Laundering Convention, which is the Convention on Money Laundering, Search, Seizure and Confiscation of the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Financing. Today we are talking about this convention as an asset recovery convention, and it's the only international binding standards on money laundering. So yes, we have the FATF recommendation, we have EU directive, but as far as the convention is concerned, is the only international binding instrument. And recently I was elected as a president, but before I was serving one mandate as a vice chair or vice president of the COP, and before I was serving for 2 years in my mandate of the Bureau. So Warsaw Convention, as Mamuka was mentioning, is very close to my heart and also to my professional activity, since I remember those 2004 and 2005 when I was present in the elaboration of the convention per se. Yes, the major added value about the convention we will discuss today, and I will have the opportunity to highlight for you some information about the recent ratification, also added value, where the convention comes with this added value to the existing international standards. And also I will allow myself to recall some of the recommendations made particularly to Georgia while going through the horizontal review of particular articles of the Warsaw Convention. So probably I will start by providing you some insights as far as the ratification statute is concerned. So nowadays we have 38 member countries, and as per our discussion, there is a strong commitment from the European Commission to ratify the convention. This is very ambitious, also from the EU perspective. We hope potentially to have this expectation of the ratification of the convention by European Union by the end of this year. And allow me to very quickly shed light on some added value where convention is going beyond the existing international standards. So first of all, we would like to mention that the convention goes in line on those standards that are embedded already in EU standards, and a part of those are embedded in EU directives. And particularly that refers to the money laundering and terrorist financing provisions and also confiscation. Should we start probably because we are both FIUs here, FIU representative. I'm the FIU of Republic of Moldova, and Damta is the very bright representative of Georgian FIU. So the added value of the convention, of the Warsaw Convention, is under the Article 14, which is the suspension of the transactions, the provisions related to the suspicious transactions suspension. And this is embedded also in AML directive. So we see this, two standards going hand in hand, EU directive and Article 14 of the Warsaw Convention. And here I should mention that Moldova and Georgia are in line with these provisions. So both, from both perspective of both countries, we have this competence. Another added value of the convention, which is now very broadly discussed in different European forums, are the corporate liability of legal, and the corporate liability is actually goes under Article 10 of the Warsaw Convention, and Georgia is seeing applying the provision of Article 10, particularly on the Article 10.2, but is not fully elaborated in the national legislation, which somehow can uniformed at the EU level, particularly from the broader effective implementation, because we are talking about how actually we are not just reflecting those standards, but how we are implementing those standards, how effective they are. So therefore, I invite Georgia to take this into account, given the fact that it's a general compliance, so we call it general compliance. However, we don't have a lot of broader information that will talk about or highlight some effective implementation of this provision. A new asset recovery directive. You probably heard about a lot because there are a lot of discussions at the EU level on the new asset recovery directive that will consider what is embedded actually also in Warsaw Convention, and particularly additional provisions will appear as far as the asset sharing and asset management. And also as far as the compensation of the third parties or of the victims of the member states. What is come to reversal of burden of proofs? This is like a very, very hot topic also, but also a very specific one for particularly for our countries. And Your Excellency, Jean-Paul, you can compliment here because you also have a broad understanding of this perspective. So when it comes to reversal of burden of proofs, it is present practice in EU at the moment. And some of the provisions are very well addressed in the provision of the Article 3.4 of the Warsaw Convention. So broadly, the Article 3 of the Convention is enlightening about the application of burden of proofs. However, we should mention that it's commendable that Georgia has a civil procedure, and therefore the civil confiscation system here is in place. But however, we would like to also reiterate that we encourage Georgia to progress by practical application of this provision. Council of Europe nowadays, I think it's worth to be mentioned that we've started a very important initiative, and it's the new protocol to the existing convention. And the new protocol has in mind features such as asset sharing, asset management, and in this particular perspective, a horizontal evaluation was also done, and Georgia is encouraged also to implement the recommendation that falls under the Article 6 of the convention. Negligent money laundering. This is another subject which is very core and key for effective money laundering convictions. And this is also a provision under the Warsaw Convention. So Article 9.6 for the negligent money laundering, we can mention that Georgia does not have any specific legislation on that matter or any provision in the criminal code. However, it needs to be mentioned that it's not a mandatory provision. Even the convention itself encourage or recommend countries to refer this particular provision in the national legislation. It's highly advisable from the perspective of the Council of Europe, Conference of the Parties, members of the Warsaw Convention, to pay particular attention to this provision. Since its core, it's embedded in the definition of the money laundering, which actually, I also provide you some insights that there is a huge appetite, a great appetite from the EU perspective to embed or to align or to transpose the definition of money laundering from the Warsaw Convention into its instruments. Well, particularly it goes under the article, this transposition goes in line with the Article 9.3 on the negligent money laundering. And probably here we need to mention that providing the mental element for more complex and difficult parts to the money laundering offense per se, it's a reason for why we don't still have this small number of cases on money laundering. But I should say that we are very ambitious as far as the Council of Europe COP perspective, and also as far as the Moneyval perspective in going into implementation of those provisions, not just the formal or should I say technical implementation of those. Well, as far as the Moldova's perspective, I'm still ready to answer to any question. However, I should mention that for us was also a long journey, but also a very ambitious one. We were recently assessed by Moneyval. We had our report. We've went through the second, and we had adopted a second national money laundering risk assessment. So it's not just once it happened. So we proved to go through this second process on identifying our national risk and threats. Moreover, as it is a real core for this process is the implementation. So the national action plan is in force in Moldova also and is reflected under the national AML-CFT strategy. There are still work in progress, and there are still a lot of space and room for improvement. And I think it's very cool now to focus on those priorities, on those European values and those European standards, and to transpose those in the best manner. But also, when we are talking about the effective implementation, it should be mentioned that it's a cross-sectorial cooperation. It's a cooperation with public-private. It's a cooperation between authorities. So alone an FIU, alone law enforcement, or alone just prosecution or judiciary cannot attain what is like behind those international provisions. And indeed, Mamuka, as you've mentioned, and His Excellency Jean-Paul, it's very core and it's important before assessment to provide a very in-depth also capacity building and trainings for those authorities involved, because it's key to understand what those recommendations are. It's not a matter for the FIU or a matter for the Minister of Justice or a matter for the law enforcement that the country is going through the assessment. It's really a lot of engagement, a national engagement in this process. And therefore, it's keen and it's core to be well informed about those standards, what those standards and those provisions are.
Mulțumim, Oksana. It's a common goal, I think, and then I think we can conclude and we can summarize by saying that, by stating that, you know, we have the identical challenges. There is a long way to go. It's a lot of work for all candidate countries to achieve the result, and we should keep in mind that, of course, these standards, MLCFT standards, and effective implementation, good assessment by Manival in this case, is important. Is okay. Maybe in certain cases it's even precondition for having a positive outcome when it comes to negotiations with Brussels. So and the EU member states capitals. So I think that's important and that's very useful to have it as a part. By the way, I'm not too much using this, I mean, modern technology unless it's too much needed. But in the team, we were discussing, you know, when we are dealing with crypto and other, you know, topics, and now most, I would say, sexy topic is this metaverse and this kind of stuff. So, and artificial intelligence. So yesterday night, I don't know why, I just typed in the Google and I entered the application and I typed to what objectives our project serves. And ChatGPT replied that we are serving to implementing EU's foreign policy objective in strengthening and promoting good governance, financial stability and integrity. Actually, I could have written a speech with it. So why I'm saying this, you know, that, you know, even if you type and you search with this new technology, with artificial intelligence, it provides you with some answers. That's why, you know, and it's not our assessment or assessment of our experts or participants. It's ChatGPT also saying that, you know, effective money laundering, you know, combating money laundering and fighting terrorism. It's also important to ensure good governance. It's important to fight effectively corruption and other organized crime and other crimes. So let's keep this in mind and let's see in our everyday work, whether we are working with authorities, we are regulators, we are civil society, we should keep this in mind. We should not disregard some important parts of, again, of this common complex environment and common complex, let's say, scheme we have in front of us. So from our side, I think last one was about presenting our project, but I want to follow Tinatin's excellent example in finishing the panel on time. Jean-Paul, you raised your hand. Okay, you have 35 seconds, please.
15 are enough. No, the point is that in order to face AFTF requests of the experts that you have mentioned, and also to comply with the accession requirement. First of all, let's be sure it is already there that the three main conventions, that's the one against transnational organized crime, which gives a lot of powers in terms of, possibility of evidences, possibility of, for example, witnesses and even repentiti and all of that. All of them, TOC and corruption plus the Warsaw, are part of the acquis communautaire. So since you have already ratified these instruments in the region, really what has to be done now, and I insist on that and I finish, is to start to really implement these instruments among each other, among yourself, and second, to train the judges properly, and then to be efficient in the confiscation. Once you have done that, you will be on the right way.
Thank you. That were indeed French 15 seconds, but thank you very much for this excellent contribution. We still have 3 minutes because I was told by Georgi that we can extend. So any question from the audience? Yes, please.
Deep Structural Reform Center. I have a question which consists of several parts, and considering the time, you are free to answer any of the parts of the question. I was wondering about the influx of Russians and Russian capital especially in Eastern European countries. If you can raise this topic or mention it regarding several issues. For example, does influx of Russian capital increase the cases of IML or CFT, or did it affected functioning of state institutions which are responsible on IML CFT issues, or were the number of the transactions increased with participation of the companies which are registered in the countries of grey list, or which are registered in offshore zones? Secondly, Mr. Samuel used the term common threat. So as we all know, EU sanctions are mostly targeting either ringleaders or the companies which are supporting the Russian war machine. Does European Union AML CFT facilities also consider Russian corrosive capital as a common threat? I mean, just generally ordinary Russian corrosive capital, which has nothing to do with either the ringleaders or with the war machine. Is it also a common threat for EU too? Thank you.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Vaja Datwashvili. Thanks for the significant insights. I work at the International Republican Institute of Georgia. So we conduct polls regularly, twice a year. Those are public opinion polls about various issues, and one of the key questions that we ask to the Georgian society is, what are the main significant challenges that Georgia face at the moment? And for quite a while, the corruption issue is really below in that list, not even making in the top 10 or top 7 issues. I would like to hear your views on that, your perspectives. What could be the main reasons that society feels that way? Thank you very much.
Any other question, comment? Yes, please.
Thank you. Tatiana Hurar, Ukraine, Institute of Legislative Ideas. And I want to add to the first question. What is interesting for us, of course, Russian assets, because we need money for reconstruction, for military, for many, for the compensation to victims and all of that. So now we are just together with our Prosecutor General Office, with legislators, are working on the non-conviction-based forfeiture instruments within the sanction evasion cases. So what is our idea is whether we can use the civil confiscation, non-conviction-based forfeiture, as Americans has already done in Malafeyev case, and seize these assets, the object of the evasion, before the conviction is there. So, and whether, in the second question, whether would it be possible, due to that asset recovery principle, to transfer this money from the EU jurisdiction to Ukraine as a victim of this aggression and the crime of sanction evasion? Thanks.
Thank you very much for these questions. Well, apparently to reply to all of them in a really adequate way will be almost impossible considering the time pressure. But let me maybe start with some of replies. And well, the first question was about Russian influx and the influx of Russians and its consequences. It started even before the war, and I think Moldova is a good example where something that is the biggest scandal in Moldovan history, and this, this theft of the million is associated with Russia as well, because actually all decisions and contracts, etc., were, and money was coming, not money, but the contracts and all companies inflicted or involved in this illegal or questionable court decisions were linked to Russia. So, and it's not only Russia. We had this, whole circle from starting from Denmark, Estonia, or it was Estonia. But everything, all these ideas, and were generated maybe in Chisinau, but Russian companies were mostly involved. So again, and that's of course it continues. So this the oligarchization. It's really important for all these countries, and it's also linked, of course, with Russian. We do have there are no kind of reports, at least I cannot quote them, but of course this migration of Russian people or Russian money after war started. This raises a lot of questions, raises a lot of concerns about evasion of sanctions, including of using some bad practices to move money around through different, it will be cash couriers or through other means. So of course this is very, very complicated topic, and unfortunately I would not say that the response, international response at this stage, been fully adequate and complying with what would be normally expected. It's a problem. So I don't know, you want to add something, Oksana or Tamta, on this topic first, and then
well, yes, Mamuka, I think that it's a very relevant question, and indeed, Mamuka, as you've mentioned, unfortunately the system of the financial system of Moldova was misused, particularly in two big huge money laundering, complex money laundering cases, one of those being Landromat and the second one being banking fraud, which affected and impacted the country heavily, and impacted not just economically but also reputationally. Because when this few years ago cases were happening, the banking system were challenging in maintaining their correspondence accounts. So while we are talking about the impact of those sanctions that are reflected in international standards, actually here it's potentially a very good example of how this reputational impact is bigger than financial. However, we are having as a priority at the national level, and probably my answer will go also to the second question on corruption, because indeed while we are going through these processes of analyzing our threats, our vulnerabilities, we really need to prioritize what is there from the perspective of the higher threat and higher risk. And definitely corruption is one of the core risk for the country. Therefore, consequently, in the next period of times, at the national level, the resources were reallocated to deal with that, but there is still a lot to be done in this perspective. So that's not, unfortunately, we are not talking about a quick win. We're talking about steps and processes and mechanisms to do so. And we are looking forward on taking these best practices. And Moldova was privileged indeed, as Samuel was mentioned, to have this EU high-level advisor missions. we benefited a lot from them because they helped us to assist and to navigate what needs to be better implemented and how it needs to be done. Therefore, we are really looking forward on expanding those mechanisms in order to be efficient in our activities.
Yeah, thank you, Oksana. About the second question, I don't know if Samuel is still here, because frankly, I would prefer myself not to get in answering this question for different reasons. But if Samuel is here, maybe he can. Yes.
I didn't quite hear very well. It was.
Here's a question once again. Yes, please.
Yes.
No, and I'm not answering not because I'm Georgian, but because we are not involved in monitoring, so it's more assistance. That's why it's better not to mix the functions. But Samuel is here, so.
Samuel used the term a common threat in your speech, and I was wondering if Russian corrosive capital is a common threat from the point of view of EU AML CFT facilities. I'm not talking specifically about the companies that are being sanctioned. We know that they are a common threat, but EU sanctions are mostly targeting either ringleaders or the companies which are supporting the war machine. Apart from these guys and from these companies, Russian corrosive capital, is it or not the common threat according from your standards? Thank you.
I honestly have to say I'm not quite understanding what you mean. Russian capital and I don't.
Corrosive capital. I mean corrupt capital.
Corrupt capital. Yes. So that's the problem. The problem is how this corrupt capital is being used. In terms of sanctions, and I'm not trying to defer, but I do have to be professional and politically correct. It's one particular thing when we say we are FATF compliant in AML CFT. You know, FATF also has sanctions part. But we are divided, and it's very convenient for me to avoid answering this question. But it's a different unit actually, which deals with sanctions. So I don't have the knowledge, and I'm not afraid to admit to go deeply into this topic. But I can refer to my colleagues.
Well, I think thanks a lot, Samuel.
Okay.
But what we can actually reply from my side is that maybe not exact answer to your question, but direct answer. But as far as I am aware, and we know this, there are certain steps which have been prepared within FATF to further deal with this kind of threats you just mentioned. First of all, recently I understand that EU has sanctioned the head of Russian FIU, right? So it's just 3 weeks ago. That's 1 month ago. So this is already a big. It's not just a private company, Chief, but it's or official from Defense Ministry. No, it's a head of FIU of Russian Federation. As you know, FATF has suspended Russia at the moment. Some further steps could not be excluded. I know Ukrainian authorities have deposited some additional requests about full expulsion, etc. So let's see how it develops. But again, please understand me correctly from our side now, just it's going to be a bit complicated. As for your question, I mean, it's also very important. I don't think here there is a joint common answer. It's not EU, unless Samuel wants to also add maybe and correct me if I will be wrong. There is no common EU kind of approach to this. I think it's country by country decision. In most EU countries, this non-conviction money, asset freezing and confiscation exists, and this could be done. But then also I understand, even including with discussions with colleagues from Kiev, is that there is a problem of also how to return and whether there is a chance money could be confiscated or frozen, but whether this money could be given to Ukraine. I think in Europe we only had one example. Was it Netherlands? If I'm not, again, I might be wrong, but Jean-Paul, you want to help me here maybe? No, you're muted, but I don't think you have information, yeah? So because we have just started working with our colleagues from FIU of Ukraine on different topics. We are supporting Ukraine when it comes to beneficial ownership registry. We are working now with FIU on some capacity building topics. And we also want now to create some mechanisms about civil recommendation 8 of FATF, which is about non-profit organizations, which may include some religious institutions in Ukraine, because I understand it's a big problem. So, but when it comes to the topic you referred, we have more general guidelines. I don't have this exact information. In theory, it's possible, but I think it's case-by-case decision by all member states of the European Union. To what, if I'm answering your question, I hope, because if I understood it correctly, you're referring to some assets which could be frozen abroad and then somehow transferred to Ukraine back, right? Based on conviction or non-conviction based. In theory, in legally speaking, there is no obstacle. There are no obstacles according to legislation of most EU countries. It's harmonized, so there should be no case. But the problem is that what to do with this money and how to proceed, and there is no kind of a general common decision which can be taken at the Brussels level. It's still a decision coming from capitals. I'm not sure if I managed to answer your question, but that's all best I can do. Samuel, you want to add maybe something? Or?
No, just to support that, in terms of how the proceeds are used from confiscated assets, there is not a concerted approach together from at the EU level. So it's nothing as well.
But again, personally, I would definitely support this idea because we really need more support. But you also need to try to ensure that the support you will be receiving when it comes to reconstruction of Ukraine also has this process of money inflow, legitimate money inflow, is well controlled and well observed, including from human rights organizations, from civil watchdogs, because you have to ensure that there are no bad cases when it comes to usage and utilization of this money. So they really have to go to the targets they were initially, let's say, defined. In this regard, I think more active participation and more active even preparation by the civil society organizations, not only from anti-corruption perspective, but from the perspective of tools how money launderers can use, I think that's something you should explore. And again, we from our project and from Brussels, we stand ready, and we have discussed already this issue with Igor Gaevsky and other colleagues from Ukraine and FIU, that we are ready to provide this support and help preparing Ukrainian NPO, civil society organizations to receive this, not a challenge, but to receive this new development in a best possible way. So I'm really sorry. I know, George, I have to apologize, but let me thank all our panelists, Samuel, Jean-Paul, Oksana, Tamta. Thank you very much indeed. Ella, not to forget her, to interpreters, and also I forgot in the beginning, not forgot, but it was just the extraordinary situation we were facing. So let me also thank IDFI, George and his team for excellent event. It's my second event. I'm attending second forum, Good Governance Forum, and I hope this practice will continue in the future. So thanks a lot, and thanks for your active engagement as well.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Very much, Mamuka, to all presenters. It's always interesting to listen presentations about anti-money laundering and combating financing terrorism. And well, I had questions about the regulation of civil society, about the money laundering, recommendation 8, but I'll keep it for myself during the lunch that we will be having straight over here. And regarding the Ukrainian aid and reconstruction, we will be having a speaker from Ukraine tomorrow at the Beneficial Ownership, Transparency and Public Procurement panel. So we can speak about that in more details tomorrow as well. So thank you once again to all presenters, to Jean-Paul, Ella, Samuel. I don't think I missed anyone. So thank you. It was really interesting, and let's continue during lunch. Thank you. Please be sharply at 3 to continue the very interesting panel.